Welcome, everyone. I'm Caroline Woods, and today we're taking a look at retirement plans for small businesses and the new federal retirement legislation, the Secure Act 2.0. Joining me for this conversation and to break it all down for us is Renee Grimm, Capital Group's Senior Vice President of Retirement Plans. Renee, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Caroline. So happy to be back. We appreciate the time.
Well, we're happy to have you. Before we get into it, I do want to remind everyone to take our poll. We want to hear why you are offering a retirement plan or thinking about it. And we also want to make sure you ask any questions that you have in the chat. We'll get to as many of those as possible, and we definitely want to hear from you. So please be sure to communicate with us. All right, let's kick things off, Renee. Bring us up to speed on the status of small businesses offering retirement plans. We, of course, talked last year. I know those numbers were pretty low. How many small businesses are offering retirement plans now?
So technically, I'd like to say not enough. But what we're seeing is roughly of our small businesses, and this could be broken down in a variety of different ways. But of our recent study, we found that about 46% of small business owners still are without a plan.
And you talk to small businesses all the time. So in your experience, what's the most important thing for businesses to get out of offering retirement plans if they are thinking about offering them?
Well, there are a ton of benefits, both direct as well as intrinsic for the plan sponsor and the employees. So as I mentioned, we just recently conducted some very fresh research. And what we found in terms of what do they want to get out of it, and this will tap into our poll a little bit. But 2/3 of small business owners, so actually 69%, said that they want to offer a plan because they actually want to help their employees save for the future. But the second biggest driver, so about 47% of the small business owner respondents said that they want to retain their employees. So I think that's pretty telling. It's fairly altruistic of the small business owner, but they're a participant too if they offer a plan. And so I think meeting their own needs and the drivers that they're looking to accomplish, help people save, and how to retain the talent that's really hard to come by in this market.
Well, speaking of the poll, the early votes look like 100% of people who have responded so far are looking to help employees save for their future, which is very much in line with your data. We'll see what some of the other respondents say as those poll results come in. But I think it's also important to note that business owners are being incentivized to offer retirement plans now. So can you explain the recent federal retirement legislation, the Secure Act 2.0? I know there are over 90 provisions, but what's aimed to specifically help small businesses, Renee?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're right, 92 provisions. It's a ton to unpack. And I think it's important also to mention that a little bit more than half, about 57% of small business owners that we polled are familiar with Secure Act. And there is a little bit of a separation in terms of employees and employers. What we really want to make sure is employers are familiar about some of the provisions that have been put in place to make accessibility and the offering of a plan become so much less intimidating than perhaps what it's been in the past. So by way of example, there are a number of different plan cost credits or deductions that can be taken by the business owner. And there's a varying degree of eligibility, if you will. But if you wanted to put a plan in place, the long story short, and I think in previous sessions with JJ, we also talked about how at some point the government may actually pay these small business owners to get a plan in place. And I think we'll get into it a little bit more, but there are some state-sponsored mandates. So employers have choice. But what we do know, and I think if we read the tea leaves, we're seeing you've got to put something in place before you're told to. And we can talk about some of those impacts. But I think some of the other things that are there to help entice employers and get employees saving more would be, depending on the employee's compensation, there may in fact be some reimbursements to the business owner for providing matching or profit sharing contributions to their eligible employee population.
So there still will be a cost associated with offering retirement plans, but you could see tax credits essentially.
Yes, most definitely. For
okay.
A new plan, yes, some tax credits available. If you are an established business owner and you have a plan, there could also be some benefits there to help enhance your plan or make some of the features and benefits more robust. For example, there is a provision called auto enrollment and auto eligibility. So essentially what that means is if you are eligible for the plan You're going to be automatically enrolled at a stated minimum percentage. And then on an annual basis, that percentage of deferral is actually going to tick up. An employee can opt out, but if an employer does this, Caroline, there's some financial incentive coming back to the employer for putting those types of features in place.
Okay, I want to dig a bit more into that, but we have a comment from Tasha Brown. She says, can Renee share the survey results with us? Are they posted somewhere? That fresh data that you were talking about.
I love that. They are very, very fresh. And so in this industry, we have to be incredibly conservative and careful. My hope is we will share this in the form of a white paper or have some of this available on our website. But for now, it's all up here, unfortunately.
So Tasha, listen closely and stay tuned. But what about, Renee, for companies who already offer retirement plans? If there are business owners out there who are sitting here saying, but I want some of these tax credits, but I already offer, do they also qualify for incentives?
Some of the incentives, yes. It will depend on what they plan to do to theoretically enrich their plan features or add some of the things like auto enrollment and auto escalation. However, the cost of the plan itself, in most cases, because there is a phase out for the financial incentives to the business owner, if you've had a plan in place for over 5 years, the likelihood that there are going to be incentives for offsetting the actual costs of your plan, not as likely for those business owners. Now, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Renee.
Just because you're an established business owner, it all comes down to whether or not you've had a plan, right? That's a very important distinguishing characteristic. You could be a 20-year-old business. If you decide to offer a plan today, there could be some financial incentives for you. If you've had a plan in place for the last 5 years, that's where some of those incentives may not be as applicable to your situation as they would to a startup plan.
And you mentioned state mandated plans. One of the poll responses is, I'm in a state that requires or will require me to offer a retirement plan. We haven't seen anyone actually vote for that yet, but I am curious, for these states that could now require or consider requiring, how common is that at this point, and what impact is that having?
It's having a huge impact, and it's far more common than I think people realize. So when we look at the state, if you will, or state of the country, 46 out of 50 states in this country either have a mandatory plan, a voluntary plan, or they've embarked in some sort of legislative effort or study in order to ascertain the feasibility of a state-sponsored plan. And so what you've seen now in certain states, I'll use California as an example. They introduced their program. They put particular teeth, as I like to call them, in place, penalties for business owners for not adhering to this new requirement. And in the state of California, there was an extraordinary amount of new plans set up. We were a great benefactor of that, as well as many other record keepers in the industry. But what we saw, Caroline, was depending on the size of the penalty to the employer, some of these states will say for every employee you have, it is a $500 penalty every year if you don't offer a plan to these individuals. So it varies state by state, but essentially what we've heard from small business owners is they want to have choice in where they invest. We actually found that 70% of the small business owners we surveyed found that the range of investment offerings, as well as the educational tools and resources, were paramount for them in making that decision in terms of what to offer. State-sponsored plans won't give you that type of flexibility. The plan is the plan, so you can either make your choice and choose what fits for you and your employees to drive the outcomes, or you can go with whatever the state-sponsored plan is that's offered in your respective state.
So the biggest benefit of offering a retirement plan before being forced to offer one, aside from avoiding penalties, is just that you have choice in the matter.
And that is a really important characteristic of this situation. You know, we look at states are run in all different types of ways, but individuals and their financial needs are as unique to us as our own fingerprint. And I think as a small business owner, they're always asking questions. Who can I let in? Who can I keep out? Am I required to do this? Am I required to do that? And when you're having those conversations, a state-sponsored plan is going to have hard and fast rules to it, where designing and offering your own plan is going to help you be able to address a lot of those specific nuanced questions that business owners have for their own situations.
And speaking of questions, please feel free to write your questions into the chat box. We definitely want to hear from you. We want to make sure Renee addresses the questions that are top of mind for you. So get those in there. But moving on, what would you say is the main concern or obstacle you hear from companies when it comes to actually setting up their retirement plans?
So these have not changed much from the survey that we did last year. And we kind of call these misperceptions, if you will. One of the most common is that my business isn't big enough or stable enough. And when we dig into what stability means, it can mean a lot of different things to small business owners. It could mean turnover of employees, it could mean instability of their revenue. But in short, what we do know is more and more and more business owners are wanting to put these plans in place that are going to be able to address things like emergency savings, which is the Secure Act provision, something that a lot of employees have demanded in terms of being able to choose. Do I participate in a qualified plan, or do I save my dollars and cents and put that somewhere else? Quite a lot there. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to, I was just taking a look at a comment from, it looks like Umit Sammy, providing value and incentives to employees is more important than 401k plans. Can you address that, Renee?
Absolutely. And I love this question. I think that a value and an incentive within the 401k plan could be something as simple as a match. So if you think about this, if you're deferring money from your salary to the tune of, let's say, 3%, and the employer is going to do a 300 match, that's double your money. And then on top of that, you can actually put vesting schedules in place. And so the reason this can be an incredibly important value or incentive, especially for the business owner who's looking to retain those employees through things like a qualified plan and being able to say, after 6 years of loyal service at my place of employment, all of that matching or that profit sharing that I've given to you over the last 6 years is 100% yours, and you can walk away at any time. And it is about preparing their future. One other thing I will say about this is our research has shown that there is a disconnect between business owners that offer a plan and those who don't, in terms of understanding how the market and the economy and rising cost of living affect their employees. Employers that offer a plan seem to be much more in tune with those struggles of their employees than those who do not. So I think if you also want to get a better pulse on what your employees need and are thinking, a 401k or a retirement plan is actually a great way to do that.
If businesses are taking the time to create these plans and to pay for these plans, what should they do, though, to make sure their employees are actually taking advantage and utilizing those plans? Because I look at an employee match and say, hey, that's free money. But I know there are people out there who say, I can't afford to take money out of my paycheck and put it into a savings account. I need it now. So what can companies do to ensure they're actually utilizing these plans?
Great question. I think this also goes to the previous question as well. For a lot of these small business employees, they have an incredibly strong desire to have access to financial professionals and to retirement planning resources to help them make better and more informed decisions. So to your example, there might be someone out there thinking about whether or not they should defer 3%. Having either a calculator or access to a financial professional that might show them, hey, if you do a pre-tax salary deferral and you do 3%, you really won't see much impact to your take-home pay. And that might help get a person just over the hump and say, I didn't realize that. I think I can actually participate. And doing something is far better than doing nothing. So I think that's another way to incentivize and encourage more participation, is the thing that people have asked for the most, and that's access to a financial professional. And a
can business owners force their employees to contribute to a 401k if they are matching?
No, they can't force them. The auto enrollment features I've mentioned have an opt-out provision. So we cannot and will not do anything with anybody's money that they haven't expressly given us permission to do. Great question.
But retirement plans, and you said this, they are a competitive tool to retain and attract talent. How important are they to workers right now?
They're very important. I don't have the stat in front of me, but I will refresh. A Bureau of Labor Statistics study, I believe it was, had actually done a 10-year look back, 2012 to 2022. And they were surveying employees, what's really important when you're looking for a new place of employment. And they found that about 40% of respondents in 2012 had said that higher compensation was most important. But now you fast forward to 2022 and they're actually saying a robust comprehensive benefits package to include a retirement plan. So much so that they will now choose that benefits package employer over an employer that may actually put a little more dollars in their pockets out of the gates. So it's become incredibly important.
We still have about, call it 6 minutes left or so. So we still have time to answer your questions. If you have any more, put those in the chat. But I want to bring it back to the Secure Act 2.0. The goal of that is really to close the savings gap. People just don't have enough money when they retire. Where do we stand at this point in terms of that savings gap?
It's still pretty substantial. If I recall, the number was 47 million Americans are uncovered by a retirement plan. And that number is starting to erode, but until we see more small businesses, which really are the backbone of this country, offering plans, we're still going to see a tremendous amount of Americans uncovered. Now, one thing that is encouraging is that in our research, the number of small business owners that are about to offer a plan or really seriously considering steps is up about 7% over the last 6 to 8 months. So I think that's an encouraging sign.
And we talked about there being 92 provisions, I believe you said, more than 90 provisions as part of the Secure Act 2.0. So there's certainly a lot to look through and digest. What advice do you have for business owners who think of that and although maybe are interested because of the incentives, it's a bit daunting? Where can they go to learn more? What are the most important things that they should realize about this new legislation?
So where to go for more? Tons of different resources that are available out there. I do think the easiest and the most efficient thing, given that most small business owners are chief cook and bottle washer, go to a financial professional, someone that you know that works for some sort of dealer firm. I would mention some, but for fear of excluding others, I won't. But connect with a financial professional. And when I say that, I mean someone that actually specializes in qualified retirement plans, not your tax accountant, not a neighbor, but talking to those financial professionals to help you understand which parts of the Secure Act can really benefit you, your business, and most importantly, the employees. So a great example of that would be things like a Roth catch-up contribution. That's an employee-centric provision to allow employees over the age of 50 to get a post-tax, essentially, contribution from the employer. Is that going to make sense for the business owner? Do they need to decide that right away? No. That's where surrounding themselves with a third-party administrator who will design a plan for you, the right financial professional that understands the qualified plan market. Those, I think, are the two places to start. But I will shamelessly plug americanfunds.com/retire. There is a host of resources about state-sponsored plans, as well as some single sheets that really synthesize the Secure Act to help a business owner wrap their arms around it.
So I would assume one of the pitfalls or the common hurdles is the cost associated with these plans, but also just the time that it might take to go through the entire process of even just doing the research to offer. So obviously, if you're working with a financial professional, that would help speed things along. But how much time should companies plan on spending to review and enroll in retirement plans?
Well, that's where having a financial professional will help. They'll do a lot of that enrollment support, or the record keeper will step in and do that. But if I were to put some time on it, what I would say is to get a new plan established, maybe carve out 3 to 5 hours over a 30 to 45-day period. That's going to be for phone calls, just to understand how to submit payroll contributions, have the actual design conversation, going back to who do you want to let in, who do you want to keep out, do you want to offer a match, a profit sharing, etc. But the way I would always say to a business owner is, do you see the value in spending 3 to 5 hours over the next 30 to 45 days in order to prepare a better financial future for yourself and your employees? And I mean, we sell tens of thousands of plans at Capital Group a year, and more often than not, the answer is yes. It doesn't have to be cumbersome.
Renee, Frank Flowers says, with people changing jobs much more frequently than a few decades ago, how does this job hopping affect a company's retirement programs?
Great question. It depends on the size of the business, Frank. But the thing is, the retirement plan assets for the employees themselves are very portable. So it could affect the cost of the plan, depending on how the plan is being paid for. Or sometimes going to a different employer that might be a little bit larger or has more participation may offer a less expensive retirement plan. So there are always reasons to explore either keeping your plan where it is, moving it to a new one. But for the individual investor, there typically aren't a lot of impacts if you're job hopping, as long as you're keeping that money invested, Frank. That's the most important thing.
And Renee, for those companies that already offer plans, how often should they think about reviewing their plans and possibly changing them?
So, as a fiduciary, you are highly encouraged, if not required, to be looking at that about every 2 years. And the things that you want to look at would be your service providers. Are you getting an appropriate value for the fee? How are your investments delivering in terms of results over the long term? Are they meeting the needs of your employees? But every 2 years or so, kick the tires and make sure your plan is set up as best it could be.
All right, we only have about a minute left, so I want to give you last word here. The key takeaway that our viewers should really walk home with. What's the most important thing for them
I
to
think
consider right now?
I love that. I think the most important thing, Caroline, is ask the question, do you think that you and your employees need a plan? And if the answer is yes, as I've always said, there is no better time to improve the financial future of yourself or your employees. Don't let the barriers to entry scare you away from at least having a conversation. No matter what the limitation is for you, if it's cost or if it's turnover, there are tons of different retirement plans that are out there that range from very little and minimal cost to much more robust solutions. Just do the research, ask the questions.
All right, I think that's a great place to leave it. It's all the time we have. Renee, thank you so much. Always appreciate your expertise.